tonight either.
No problem.
Oh, I've got
Welcome.
on there. Okay.
Hey, Hedy.
Hi. It'll be interesting, Marian, to ask folks to put in the chat where they're calling from, because I sent out the information to like 100 people from central Minnesota. But that's up to you.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'll definitely ask.
So they're treating it actually like a Zoom. People. I am.
Hello. Oh, hi, Luther. Yes, this is similar to a Zoom meeting, the setup of it. I'll go through some housekeeping things in a moment, but we're letting folks trickle in. We got about 2 minutes before we'll get started. So thank you all for being here tonight.
It's very deep in souls.
Welcome to tonight's reading. We have folks who are still trickling in, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Loft Literary Center's Creative Nonfiction year-long final reading. We're so excited to celebrate our cohort members as they share from their completed manuscripts tonight. My name is Marianne Mansler, and I am the Loft's Program Manager of Education, and will also be hosting tonight's event. The Loft recognizes the original peoples of this place and affirms tribal sovereignty. We acknowledge that the state of Minnesota, the Loft, and Open Book exist on unceded homelands of the Dakota people. Our dear readers have spent the last year working hard to complete their manuscripts, and we're so excited to celebrate them tonight with you. Our special thanks, of course, to Sun Young Shin, who led our cohort this year, and for her work on behalf of her students in the Loft community. The year-long writing project, which is in its 9th year, and I think 3rd year with Sun Young, advances the power of writers and readers to craft and share stories, to create and celebrate connections, and to build life-sustaining, just communities. As you'll see tonight, the impact of this program is lifelong in building and maintaining sustainable skills and practices, building enduring relationships, a trusted network of readers, and finding access to resources to confidently pursue a writing life moving forward. I can personally speak to the commitment, the brilliance, and the heart of my fellow cohort members, and I'm excited to hear from their works tonight. To my fellow cohort members, I'm so proud of each and every one of you for showing up every week, week after week, for carving out time for our late night meetings, reading each other's work, responding to one another's work, and just reinvigorating the writing process altogether. Y'all did this, whether bringing us along as you made dinner, tending to children, and family members, balancing work commitments. The Loft, as well as myself, will always be here for you, each and every one of you, cheering you on in your coming successes and opportunities. And I'm just so grateful to be here with your loved ones, friends, tonight. So take a minute to appreciate the sea of faces, digital squares, and, see that our community is so much bigger than even just this virtual call tonight. There's thinkers, tinkerers, creators, party planners, whatever you have it here. So if you like what you hear tonight, you want to support our work, I encourage you to check out theloft.org and become a friend. So without further ado, I have a couple of just housekeeping items. We do have 2 summer cohorts that start in the summer in fiction and poetry. So if you are working on something yourself, I encourage you to check out those upcoming cohorts. When the readers are reading, please try to be on mute so that we're not distracting from their work and giving them that space. And you'll receive an evaluation at the end of this program. So I really appreciate it if you could fill it out. That helps us to plan future programming. And yeah, it's really just great to see your feedback. So without further ado, I'll let Sun Young Sheng kick us off. I'll just read really quickly her bio, which we should have dropped in the chat for y'all, our program for tonight. Sun Young Shin is the author of Heart Eater, a memoir of immigration, language, and other metamorphoses forthcoming from Black Lawrence Press in early 2026, as well as 5 books of poetry, 3 children's books, 3 anthologies of essays, including A Good Time for the Truth, Race in Minnesota, and many other literary and community-based art projects. She lives in Minneapolis with her family, more at sunyoungshin.com. She's also a wonderful human with the cutest pup. Thank you, Sun Young.
Thanks, Marianne. And thanks, Jack, for being here too. Thanks to the Loft for being really an amazing home for this program and for our project. I'm so excited. I've just been so really thrilled and inspired by this group of writers for this year. And I'm just super in love with them and their work. And I couldn't be more grateful to be here. So thank you everyone for spending a little bit of your time with us. It's going to be well worth it. Please do, as folks are reading, show your appreciation with the reacts and in the chats, and do please read the program if that's helpful for you. I'm also going to read people's bios. And I think we're going to be reading in the order that our bios are written. And but correct me if I'm wrong, Marianne, but I don't think Bao Bai is here.
Yeah, she's not coming.
Okay, so I do have a separate bio for Bao Bai, so I will read hers after. So I'm going to read Marianne's, and then Huang's, and Angelina's, and then Hedy's, and then they will each present their work in that order, and we will clap and appreciate for each of them. I'm really, really thrilled. Their work is beautiful, important, relevant. I'm completely personally invested in each of these projects and in each of these writers. They are all phenomenal community world leaders, thinkers, feelers, and I just really can't say enough. I'm very sentimental and protective of this group. Feel like a little mother chicken. Not that they consent to that, but I'll just, I feel very protective of them, and not that they need my protection, but they're just great. And it's a brave and vulnerable thing to read your work. So I'm just glad that they are stepping up to this and that you're all here for it. So first, Marianne Mansler, who was our double agent as our Loft liaison and the manager of these programs, and also one of our artists. Marianne Mansler has over 10 years of experience in managing and facilitating literary arts classes and programs for youth and adults, most recently as the Director of Youth and Community Programs at Lighthouse Writers Workshop, educator at Prodigy Ventures, and founding English and Humanities instructor at the Cube High School in Denver, Colorado. Her work has appeared in Best American Essays 2022, Fourth Genre, The Seventh Wave, 5280, and elsewhere. Hoang Murphy is the author of many memos, op-eds, numerous emails, and hopes to write a book someday. When avoiding working on his writing project, He is the CEO of People Serving People. He is also a big fan of Little Hippos, Legos, and, like many, holds infinite hope for the Timberwolves. Angelina Nguyen is a Vietnamese American essayist, blogger, and memoirist. She writes to heal intergenerational trauma and strengthen community. Her primary audience are fellow Vietnamese American millennials whose families fought in, survived, and fled from war, who inherited trauma and must rebuild well-being for themselves, their families, and their community. Hedy Tripp is a Singapore Eurasian. She has an MA from St. Cloud State University and has taught ethnic studies and Pan-Asian American issues. She is a recipient of numerous awards, including the City of St. Cloud's 2022 Legacy Award as a social justice activist and writer. And she is much, much more, and you will get to hear a little bit about it. So if we could, everyone would, if you want to unmute for just a second, and give all of our writer readers a hand, that would be really wonderful, or fingers. Thank you so much. What a blessing to be together in these maddening times and times of opportunity. So I am going to hand it back to Marianne to read from her work.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to read from my memoir project called Mumu, a memoir of illness, identity, and intuition. So this memoir project explores the experience of cancer as a young adult through a multicultural lens, exploring Eastern and Western beliefs and concepts of health, wellness, family, and beyond. So the chapter that I'm going to read tonight is titled Durian Fruit. This chapter is set in Malaysia, and I guess some things to know are I was previously in Vietnam, so living abroad, teaching prior to moving to Malaysia, where I was going to start a teaching fellowship in a sort of remote region. Okay. My new roommate and two girls from the Fulbright program haphazardly chose a table in the outdoor restaurant opposite the hotel. The air stuck to me, cooled momentarily by a single rotating fan. I remember when I first moved abroad months ago and felt all of this, stunned, eager, unsure where to begin. By now, Vietnam had slipped far behind me. My physical examination, the last piece of the puzzle, had fit perfectly into place. Your enlarged lymph node is nothing a few antibiotics can't fix, said my doctor at the Vietnamese hospital. You are healthy and ready to teach. Less than a few days ago, I had been in Vietnam eating bang xeo, grilled pork, and pickled veggies wrapped in a delicate crepe. And now, over metal trays of crunchy stuffed thosai and pillowy Malaysian flatbread roti canai, we unloaded our 2-minute stories around the table. Where are you from? Where did you go to school? First time abroad? My roommate, Afreen, told us about a documentary she had worked on in Pakistan before coming here, and another girl had been a high school teacher from New Jersey. We found ourselves halfway across the world, taking part in centuries-old tradition of breaking bread and breaking through the awkward, nice-to-meet-yous on our first night together. Each of us in a sleep-deprived post-flight stupor, yet determined to make friends and to make them fast, our faces warmed by the steaming food in front of us. We couldn't stop marveling at where we were. We were happening. We were here. To get a spot in this program, we had to pass through numerous application processes, interviews, and selection rounds with various Fulbright committees, and even after winning, waited another 6 months to arrive at this new place. Unlike everyone else, I had only a few months to prepare, having been given a last-minute spot as an alternate. From our seats, we watched dozens of cats wander the street and sleep in the shade. I practiced gratitude by saying Terima kasih to the waiter as he dropped off our food. He instructed us to plunge our warm pancakes into the tiny tin bowls filled with a rainbow of curries and chutney sauces. The center of our table looked like the cosmos in miniature. Stars and planets and red dwarfs shimmied in front of us. I knew I should be writing my way through everything before I missed all the stories along the way, but I kept telling myself, I'll have tomorrow, or the day after that, or the day after that. Each newness bled into the next. My roommate mentioned the meteor shower, expected to glance over the city later that night. Meteors look static, like they radiate from a fixed point in the sky, she said, but that's only your eyes tricking you. I wondered if I should stay up, if I should offer to stay up and watch for it. I didn't. As I looked up, I thought about all the meteors, cosmic particles that would become a sea of dust before they ever reached us. A star was brightest in its decay, becoming nothingness. And like those ripples traveling across light years of space-time, I was a star reaching my point of no return. My body was on the verge of a nebulous collapse. I just didn't know it yet. The first morning in Kuala Lumpur, before our language intensive and culture immersion classes began, I hurried downstairs to grab breakfast from the hotel buffet, motivated by a familiar first day of school excitement. Perfect handwritten script on tiny tinted placards, delineated dishes of nasi lemak, Indian breads, glazed satay, stir-fried noodles, dim sum, and kaya toast stacked next to hard-boiled eggs and sliced fruit, leafy salad, scrambled eggs, bacon, and pancakes, butter cake, lemon cake, and dreamy moon cakes topped with durian and mashed mung bean, sweet and salted, tantalizing guests from a separate table. A watermelon carved into the shape of a blooming flower rested on a porcelain white bowl. I piled my plate high on a bed of vegetable fried rice that smelled like home. A miniature Malaysian flag adorned each plate. Even the Bahasa Malaysia language shared similarities with Tagalog. My heart thrummed when I heard a local say, "Ako anak, Malaysia," and I intuitively gathered the meaning. I am from Malaysia, or the colloquialism of la added to the end of every sentence as an affirmation, a dismissal, or out of exasperation. Okay la, sorry la, come on la. A time capsule of meaning borrowed from the Chinese with an affinity to the Filipino expression, oo, for quick agreement or exclamation, excitement. Other words like salamat and salamat, sedap and sarap, sakit and sakit, asa and asa, resemble each other so closely they felt like home. In just a few words, I glimpsed the intricate intersection of these countries' stories beneath the planes of breath, continents cut between teeth. Despite over 4,000 years of physically and emotionally drifting apart due to colonization, we were closer than we thought. We studied Bahasa Malay in the ballroom at the hotel and in small classrooms at the University Technology Malaysia, which was a nearly 30-minute walk from the hotel. We chose our own baju kurung, a conservative, easy-to-wash Malay uniform for professional or casual settings, from a room full of gold, deep blue, green, ruby red, lash purple, floral, and pink dresses, all draped over tables or hanging from metal rods. The synthetic material of the baju kurung wrapped in boiled heat, so if we wanted to wear more Western clothing, it had to be loose-fitting and opaque. Women were instructed to wear long sleeves, baggy pants, or long skirts to cover collarbones, ankles, and elbows in 100-degree weather. The men, for the most part, could wear whatever they wanted. This is a sign of respect, one of the program coordinators told us on the first day. He was born and raised in Kuala Lumpur. Malaysia is a very diverse place, very accepting, but people aren't used to seeing unmarried women walking around with unmarried men outside of KL. No shorts, no scantily clad clothing, and definitely no flip-flops. He was right. People gawked at the novel concept of an independent woman. For all the glittering buildings I spied with their trendy technological advances, I was transported back a century each time I realized I needed a husband to justify going out in the wider public. If I had felt alone before, this took it to a whole new level. I wondered how this might impact my immersion into the culture, as well as my ability to complete my minimum requirements of interacting with students, to help them practice their English with a fluent speaker. My role there, as I understood it, was to foster intercultural understanding and friendship, to become an integral part of the school and the community. Parts of speech and irregular conjugations aside, I would work to find ways to share American culture, music, and art. I would grade papers, design lessons, and help other teachers where needed, and run English camps with my teaching cohort across the region. I might be the first biracial American woman many of them had ever met or seen outside of the movies. My role there was to fit in while standing out, to orient myself with the ease of a local and the appeal of a foreigner. I think I'll read maybe one more section. One evening, after venturing to the night market, a few of us from the Fulbright cohort walked along a dark corridor of Jalanalore when we encountered an old man selling durian fruit, one of Malaysia's famed delicacies. A single light bulb lit his roadside stall, illuminating the staggered thorny fruit that hung from brightly colored string like a constellation of golden milky planets. One of the guys in our group dug into his pockets for a few bills to buy a bag of sliced and quartered fruit. The known aphrodisiac smelled honeyed and eggy at once. I wondered what other side effects might it have on its consumers. The vendor handed us a handful of poking sticks bound by a stretch rubber band that looked ready to snap at any moment. You must try all of it, he said, his bitten down fingernails probing the dry, jagged husk of one before slicing it open with a knife. For you, please take, for good luck. Juice seeped out. I sense great things in your future, he said eerily. Beneath the spiky armor, he excised a pair of pulpy lungs. One girl made a noise like she was going to be sick. I dare you to eat the whole thing for $5, she said, laughing. I stabbed a slice and held it close to my nose, but I couldn't do it either. I wasn't any better than any of them. Afreen, my roommate, shook her head when I tried to hand her a piece. I shoved the unwanted stick back into the bag, ready to dispose of it when no one was looking. The soft durian insides reminded me of balut, a half-fertilized duck embryo that is cracked open and eaten. Few foods conjure up revulsion in Western popular culture like balut. Travel foods feature balut for its shock factor, and American game shows wield it like a penalty for failing to complete a challenge. But to Filipinos like my mama, it is a warm, soupy comfort food served best with salt, a tradition passed down from generation to generation. I remembered Mama spooning it out of its shell with her fingers, trying to coax me, a 9-year-old, to try it. She insisted it tasted like chicken. Tasted like chicken. It would make me smarter and stronger in the face of supernatural creatures like a swang. If I could find a white boyfriend who would agree to eat it, that meant he passed the true test of love. That meant he was a keeper. My 9-year-old self reacted to the delicacy just as the celebrities did on those game shows, gagging and flailing in protest whenever she tried to convince me to try it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne. That was gorgeous. I love it. I love all the details so much, and I'm just so excited to keep reading more. So thank you. And next, we have our very own Huang Murphy.
Thanks, everyone. I so appreciate everyone attending. Just going to be reading the first 10 pages of a hopeful eventual memoir. And yeah, so I'll just jump in. So it's August of 2017. I just moved back to St. Paul in July. I had just moved back to St. Paul in July after having been away for 18 years. However, at this particular moment, I'm across the river in Minneapolis, sitting in my car, parked at the end of each street. Its moniker was earned by having a stretch of restaurants, mostly Southeast Asian spots, that run a few blocks at the end of Nicollet Avenue, which in turn is famous for coming to a dead end, with the world's most stubborn and now defunct Kmart blocking it from being a throughway. For nearly 25 years, it stood in the way, stopping the effort to connect communities, a symbol of corporate greed against all common sense and progress. On an otherwise unremarkable weekday, it was a welcome sight. Seeing the now faded Kmart sign lurking just over the fence was like seeing an old friend. Nothing needed to be said. It did not ask anything of me. The Kmart and I just sat there as I anthropomorphized it, and we recalled how it served as a beacon of endless possibilities when I was a kid sitting in that same parking lot 1 month and 25 years ago. I am 8 years old. Oh wait, I am 9. Today is my birthday. I have not celebrated one of these before, but Lori said I would be getting presents and it would be celebrated for being a year older. I had no idea that this was supposed to be happening all along. Every year of my life, on the same day, I had not really grasped what it meant to be a year older, but marking the day seemed to make it significant, even though I did not understand exactly why. Lori, the person who would be the first to celebrate my birthday, is in charge of this and all other activities in the house in which I was staying. She was not my biological mother. She was my foster mom. But at that age, I did not understand what foster home meant. I didn't understand the nature of our relationship and wasn't aware that I was in foster care. She has light brown skin and wears her hair pulled back in a bun, which exacerbates the few wrinkles by her eyes and the edges of her mouth. I do not look at adults in the face very much, so in the future in which I am not living with her, these are the only physical details I will remember about her. Lori looked serious most of the time, but now, looking back, I think she was just tired. She was always really kind, the kindest person I'd ever met at that point. She was kind enough to let me stay in our house and make food for me. In the new world in which I found myself, she was kind enough to teach me how things worked. One time, however, I made a big mistake. Instead of addressing her by her first name, Lori, I accidentally called her mom. And boy, did I hear it. She sat me down on one of the kitchen chairs and explained that she was not my mama, that I had a mom somewhere, and that she was a foster mom. This was not her trying to shame me. She was doing what social workers should have done, which was to explain to me who I was, where I was, and why. But they didn't. I asked her about the difference between a mom and a foster mom, and she explained that she was just for now. I recall her voice having some grit to it, enough to tell me she had seen enough of the world to be above being questioned about how it ran. So I fixed my face so as not to cry, but I was devastated. The place that I learned what top and bottom sheets were, where I learned the joys of fried chicken and the horrors of canned sweet potatoes, I learned for the first time what home felt like, and now it had a terminal date. This was harsh at that moment, and there are different ways to name this boundary. However, I'm deeply grateful for Lori for her honesty. I needed to know what the role really was. It was like the first time an adult cared enough about me to tell me the truth. My brother had his 8th birthday the month before, so I have some idea of what to expect. It is also a visitation day with our biological father. The social worker packed us up in her car, and we got dropped off at the restaurant where we would spend the day with him. His girlfriend, 2 kids who are her 2 kids, and who are a few years younger than me. As we shuffle in, I make a point to acknowledge the little golden Buddha in the entryway. I nod, and unspokenly, I recognize his alleged power, despite never seeming to reach me. A first of many gods to stoically observe my play. The thick smell of incense fades as I walk through the entryway into the restaurant. We are invited by the scent of rag water and pho. My brother bounds ahead to where everyone is sitting in the back by the entrance to the kitchen. I pause to take in the sight of something even grander than the god I just encountered. I stare at an ocean of blackness stretching from the floor to the ceiling. I am lost in its vastness. A shout breaks the spell that was cast on me, and I walk away from the biggest television I have ever seen. My father is sitting in the furthest back booth, saying something I do not understand. I slide into the booth across from him, and my brother pauses his bouncing enough to sit next to me. We are rewarded with a bowl of pho. I obediently eat, grateful for the meal. I just sit there and watch as plates, bowls, and people move around me. My brother eventually shouts aloud to anyone and everyone that it is my birthday. I do not understand why, but my cheeks flush, and I'm embarrassed by the sudden attention. There's a scramble, a cardboard box materializes in front of me. In there are a bunch of toys, some of which I recognize, but most I don't. I take them out one by one to assess them. The ones with the wheels on the bottom, I push around to mind playing with them. What is expected of children when given a toy. So I do my best to play the part. I do not want to be seen as ungrateful, but I am disappointed. Not in the box of toys cobbled together from old McDonald's Happy Meals. The benefit of not having a lot is that you cherish everything that you do eventually get. I'm disappointed, not in the present, nor that used to be someone else's, but that it was not a gift and that my time here was not celebrated. It is a sadness that wells up in the back of my throat. I do not understand it, so I swallow to drown it. My brother is as loud as I am quiet. He is warm and sweet when I am distant and playing. Where I pause, he leaps. We knew we were mixed, but my brother made that really obvious. He has paper white skin and eyes that could not decide if they were going to be blue or green, and stick straight hair, with the exception of a cowlick at the end of his forehead that swooshes straight up. I am the darker brother, with my tan skin and brown eyes. We seem to exist in each other's contrast. He is my little brother, and yet he takes up so much space. I want to be invisible, and he demands to be seen. As much as this annoys me, I'm jealous of it, for it gets him what he wants. He is upset that I was given a box of toys. I offered to share them, but I know that this is not going to be good enough, and I'm right. He shouts his displeasure. It's not fair. He always gets better stuff. I take a breath because I can sense a crackle in the air. A storm is brewing. My father jumps up in an attempt to diffuse it. He takes my brother's hand and walks with him out of the restaurant. The social worker who was supervising the visit waddles after them. I'm left in the booth with my father's girlfriend at the table next to me. I know she is in charge because her parents own the place. I do not like her, and she does not like me. She affirms this belief by saying something to me that we both know that I do not understand. She then tells me in English that I am stupid, and I believe her. I could not understand Vietnamese, and despite some feeble attempts to learn, I still don't. The intonations are rocks that refuse to be smooth despite all of the tumbling, and they stop the words from leaving me. In school, they assumed I could not speak English because I was a newcomer, meaning I was new to the US and qualified for a Title IV language services, despite having lived in the US since I was 2 years old. The truth is, I never learned Vietnamese. I did not hear it enough. I do not know my mother tongue, which makes a twisted sense since I did not have a mother to teach it to me. Back in the restaurant booth, my father's girlfriend is growing tired of berating me. I do not take her bait. As she walks away, in consolation, she says, "It is because I'm too stupid to know English either." My brother announces his return by launching himself into the seat beside me. My father and the social worker walk up, and she tells us it is time for us to go. My brother gives our father a hug, and we proceed to leave. We arrive at Laurie's to much fanfare, as my brother spills out of the car just as soon as it stops. He is so excited to get inside that he stumbles up the stairs while Laurie and the social workers talk at the front stoop. I run inside to see what my brother is just so excited about. When I get upstairs, my brother is already leaving our bedroom with his trophy in hand. He shows me the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, a lime green Game Boy Color. I am in disbelief as I do not know anyone who has one. And now, without any time to prepare myself, my brother is playing Mario on it. I watch him play for what could have been 15 minutes or 3 hours because I am entranced watching as he is playing. Laurie somehow teleports directly behind us. She says something in a tone that makes me remember everything I've been guilty of in my now 9 years of life. I return to my body as we scramble to understand that she is telling us that Nick, her son, is in charge while she runs an errand. She then tells me that I have to come with her. I obediently shuffle away from our window into the Mushroom Kingdom to follow her into the car. I do not think anything of the drive or what we are doing until I hear the familiar squeak of her car's brakes as we park. We get out, and I notice where we are. I am standing before the Buddha because I am in heaven and I must be dead. I bask in the yellow glow of a sign that says Toys R Us. I did not know it was real. It is a place that only existed in the breaks between my Saturday morning cartoons. I float behind Laurie as she walks in. I'm so overwhelmed by the glory before me that I do not even get annoyed when Laurie reminds me for the millionth time that I look with my eyes, not my hands. He has told me so much that I instinctively walk through stores with my hands in my pockets, even now. As we walk down each aisle, she asks me what I want. I'm so overwhelmed and in disbelief that I'm unable to say anything. Laurie sharply answers my silence with a question that sounds like a demand. "Boy, I am not going to ask you again. What do you like?" I finally stammered out a word that I hoped was Pokemon. I then noticed that Toys R Us clerk was waiting for me to answer. He opens the sliding glass shelf and asks the second most important question an inspiring Pokemon trainer could be asked: red or blue? I steady my resolve and confidently answer, red. We check out, and Laurie lets me hold the Game Boy cartridge the entire way back to the house. While she drives, I think through the best scenarios for asking my brother to share custody of his Game Boy. I conclude that the only way is if I let him play my game first. I follow Laurie inside. She puts her purse on the table And as I'm about to leave the kitchen to head upstairs to start negotiations with my brother, she takes out a box from her purse and hands it to me. I gingerly and carefully accept it. I'm not sure what to do, and I stand and Laurie asks me, "So what do you say when someone gets you something?" I sheepishly reply with a thank you. She gives me the cue that I can leave by turning around. I bolt up the stairs to start the long, difficult journey becoming a Pokemon master. I'm 26 years old. I'm sitting in my car, trying to justify what I'm doing in the parking lot of a Vietnamese restaurant. Parking lots are supposed to be unremarkable. They exist as the place between things, the place you are leaving or a place that you've just arrived at. It is never the destination or the reason for being somewhere. A liminal zone between where you were and where you want to go. And so it became a decision point in my life. Do I step out and begin the longest 20-second walk? Or do I leave knowing that there is less emotionally fraught and existentially demanding soup at a minimum of 5 other restaurants on this street? I suppose it would be not much of a story if I had not decided to walk in. However, just as I was ready to work up the courage to open the door, 2 men dressed in all white except for a dingy apron came out of the restaurant. They lit up cigarettes and were talking to each other. I stare at them as inconspicuously as I can. One of them looks familiar, but he is larger and much more pale than I remembered. Before I could panic about being recognized, he looks at me for a brief moment and continues with his break. I feel a mix of emotions, an instant rush of relief, a wave of disappointment, and a well of surprise at how weak this all seems. I am shocked that even now, after all this pain that I've experienced, with someone so utterly undeserving of my emotional investment, somewhere that I thought I had buried for good, I'm still that little kid hoping to be seen by the person who, above all else, is supposed to recognize their son. If I was not seen at 9 years old, why would I be seen at 26? I'm ashamed that any expectation still exists. They flick their cigarette butt on the ground, and I head back. I will not let them win. Win what, you might ask? I do not know. But he will not win it. Defiant, even if just to myself. I wait for what feels like an unsuspicious amount of time, and I walk in. Thanks.
Yay. Ooh. Thank you so much, Huang. Such an incredible, always combination of the child voice and the adult voice, but it just doesn't, it keeps us in the spell, and it's harrowing and tender and funny and very real. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Next, I'm very excited to have us hear from Angelina Nguyen.
Thank you, Young. Thank you everyone for joining tonight. I am honored that this crowd is like way bigger than I have ever had before me when I read my work. So the projects that I work on for this year-long class is something that's been in my heart and in my mind for like it feels like 15 years. It's just the story of my family's journey. So my father was drafted to fight in the Vietnam War, and then he served for 10 years. His side lost, and then he was held as a prisoner of war for 10 years, and then had got out, had kids, and we came to St. Paul as refugees when I was young. And the mental health aspects of all that's happened through the generations have never been touched on in my family or really in my community. So it just tugs at me to work on this project. So what I have prepared to share with you is it should take about like 5 or 7 minutes to read. It's the prologue in the beginning of the manuscript. I feel sad. It's a mild sadness most of the time, just a trace that I can hide with a forced smile, an upbeat tone, or positive words. I've learned to live with it for so long, to mask it so well that you can't tell it's there unless you look closely. Then you see it in my eyes, the way I stare into nothingness or zone out. my spirit flying elsewhere even though my body is in the room. You see it in the stories I tell with a downward drop in tone. You see it in my gait, how I move with heaviness as if I carry a big, invisible burden. Sometimes it's an overwhelming sadness, strong enough to sink me into a depression, to keep me in bed for years. But most of the time, it's like sweat in summertime, always there, frequently returning, stubborn, so mild you can't see it, so mild sometimes I forget I feel sad. There it is again, that melancholy, so subtle, light as a feather, yet as piercing as Minnesota -40 degrees wind chill, disrupting my breath. Once upon a time, the sadness had been monstrous, consuming me whole. I lay in my dark bedroom day after day, year after year, looking for a reason to go on like a castaway looking for land. Nowadays, I keep it at bay the best way I know how, with worldly distractions, a busy work schedule, accomplishments and promotions, awards and recognitions, traveling here and there to places that don't feel like home, shopping for things I already have plenty of. Flashy things make me forget for a moment that I'm sad. Like a shadow, this sadness follows me and I become used to it. I function in spite of it. I used to think worldly successes were the cure, that if I achieve, I will be happy. So I focus on achieving as if my self-worth depended on it, as if it's the key that will unlock paradise and erase my family's and my own suffering. Make all the poverty and humiliation and pain we've endured worth the hassle. I achieve, like a good Vietnamese daughter of refugees. I have everything I used to want and more. I achieved the vision my parents set for me, the dream that made their sacrifices worth it. I got straight A's and awards and scholarships and honors, all the flashy things that my mom proudly bragged to other Viet elders. I finished multiple degrees. I climbed the career ladder. I have a house. I dress well. I help my parents pay for stuff. I'm blessed with a wonderful husband and children. But I still feel sad, even when everything is going well. Even when my biggest problems are trivial things like the inability to decide what to wear today, or the pad thai I ordered is spicier than last time, or I can feel a pimple budding near my chin, and the song playing on my car radio is annoying. I remember a distinct thought that crossed my mind when, as a teenager, I laid in bed at night dreading school the next day, hating the emptiness of it all. In Vietnam, when I was a young child, many children didn't have an opportunity to attend school. Instead, they roamed the streets selling lottery tickets, cigarettes, and chewing gum, or they begged with their parents. In America, there was a yellow school bus that picked me up close to my public housing unit and drove me to school for free. The public schools I attended were underfunded and racially segregated, but still, it was accessible education. Even the textbooks were free. My school lunch was free for the first few years and then reduced in price. Unappetizing stuff, but still very affordable. In the Vietnam of my childhood, you were lucky if you had 2 meals a day, leave alone one that had all the nutrients of the food pyramid. Our first few years in America, Dad used to comment how much more we have here compared to Vietnam. We have a flushing toilet as opposed to a squat toilet. We have a landline telephone as opposed to no phone at all. A refrigerator, a gas stove that conveniently turn on with a twist of a knob, as opposed to a flame you start with a match and keep going with a handheld straw fan. A mattress as opposed to the hard ground or a wooden bed. A family car as opposed to a family bicycle. How blessed we were. So if I didn't look forward to the life and the schooling I had, I thought, was I ungrateful? Is sadness a result of failure to be grateful for what you have? When you come from abject poverty and desperate circumstances, it's easy to equate materialistic goods, society's definition of success, and opportunities of economic gain with emotional fulfillment, as if it's the North Star for which we reach. We coordinate our efforts for 2 or 3 generations, one generation making huge sacrifices for the next. For my parents and grandparents, basic physical needs and materialistic abundance were indeed the next step to progress. To own a home, one with working utilities, better if it's spacious enough so most family members have their own room. Even better if it's newly constructed. To own a car, multiple cars, a Mercedes or a Lexus. To enjoy a family meal with abundance of food, a dozen dishes and drinks, so much that everyone has to take home food because we can't eat it all, and to host that kind of meal regularly. That's the definition of success and abundance for the colonized and the displaced. We, as a family, achieved the reality, and I feel empty. All this time, I put my head down, focused on taking the next step forward, and the next, until I reached the top of the mountain on a map my parents drew. I get there, look around, and wonder, is this it? Is this all there is to life? If it weren't for this undeniable sadness, I would tolerate that question, that doubt in the back of my mind, and dismiss it with a newly released Netflix show or a cute luxury handbag. This sadness is begging to be acknowledged. Face me, see me, figure out why I'm here and do something about it, it says. Depression is a luxury. A good friend of mine with a background in social work once said in our conversation about mental health in refugee communities, when your physical safety is under threat or your basic needs are unmet, your energy is focused on survival. When you're a soldier in prison and starved, you focus on getting through each day. When you're raising children by yourself while your husband is at war, you hustle to bring food home. When you leave your homeland out of desperation and resettle in a new country, you strive to learn the language and get any job you can. You don't have time to notice that you feel sad, shocked, angry, frustrated, or pained. You don't have time to face your grief and process your trauma. Only after the years have passed, the dust has settled, in your air-conditioned home with a moment of peace, your past feels safe enough to emerge. You buried it for so long you almost don't recognize it. Where is this coming from? For refugee and immigrant communities, intergenerational trauma is felt in the second and third generation. The way it's so inexplicable, how it lingers even with all the dreams achieved and boxes checked, makes me wonder, is this sadness even mine? Yes, it is my own. It's also my inheritance, a precious gift from my ancestors, so much wisdom and purpose wrapped in memories tied with a bow of sadness. Hello there, it says, knocking on my door until I welcome it in and listen to what it has to say. Come on in, I finally answer.
Oh, Angelina, thank you so much. Your writing always feels really, there's something ageless about it. And when your use of the word sadness just is like it's very piercing. It's a simple word, but we don't give it, I think, enough honor. And I really always appreciate you making for space for that and giving us the images and reflections. So thank you so much. Really beautiful. Thanks everyone for everyone who's making comments, if you can too, that's really wonderful. I'll save them for our writers after our session, to our reading. Definitely not least, but last tonight, which is appropriate to just round us out and put a bow on it and bring all the fire and wisdom that she always brings. I'm super excited and honored to get to reintroduce Hedy Tripp, and you will all be amazed. And those of you who know her already are already excited to hear what she has to share. So
Thank you. Thank you. And Sun Young has been a fabulous mentor for us for the whole year. And welcome everybody. All my folks from central Minnesota, welcome. So I, at the moment, have titled my manuscript Burning Fields. It's vignettes of one woman's journey, that's me, from colonialism to anti-racism. I'm going to read the prologue and then the first excerpts from the first few pages of the first chapter. In 2015, I found a small packet of yellowed, ragged papers, carefully folded in four, tucked in a weathered, discolored plastic bag, and tied with jute string. They were in my mother's hoarded collections in St. Cloud, Minnesota, where she had lived with me, my husband, and her grandchildren for 15 years. As I carefully unfolded the papers, I could not at first read the tiny penciled letters, edited here and there in ink, those tiny cursive words, some disappearing into time, struggled on these faded scraps of paper. So I painstakingly scanned each page, magnified each line, and then transcribed each legible word. And I was amazed at the story it unfurled. These were my father's scribbled notes recounting the Battle of Singapore and the fall of Singapore in World War II. They were written in 1942. It recounted his capture as a prisoner of war, his incarceration in the coldest regions of Japan's northernmost island of Hokkaido, and finally his release after the atomic bombs wreaked its terrible damage on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ending the war. 2 folds of paper quartering the memories. Did he keep them close to his heart, crusted in sweat and grime, to be found years after his death? Did he intentionally write these minuscule words so that his captors could not read them? Was I, his future daughter, just a thought or dream or even a possibility? So it was only in 2015, when my mother was 101, and she was pretty feisty at 101, that we first read about her husband's, my father's, detailed story when at the age of 33, he fought in the front lines of the Battle of Singapore. When he had come back, they were married actually for 39 years, and he passed when he was 77. My mother lived to 103, passing in December 2017. The original documents are stored at the National Archives of Singapore, and I hope one day to visit the POW site and imagine the trauma he went through. So it was this story that inspired me to seriously think of myself as a writer, and then to write this memoir of linked vignettes, beginning with my parents' stories and then spanning and spinning over nearly 8 decades of my life. I will be 80 in 4 years. How did I become anti-racist, despite being born into the colonialism and racism of Singapore's early pre-independence days? How did I deal with the phenomena of identity change, from being a Singapore Eurasian, growing up in Kampung Padang Tebaka, village of the learning fields, to becoming an invisible other when I immigrated to America in 1978, and then finding my identity now as a mixed race Singapore Eurasian American. My travels gave me eye-opening experiences that further shaped the person I am today. I had the opportunity to be amongst the Samosir Batak of Sumatra, Indonesia, and the shamans of Mindanao, southern Philippines, and they were resilient in their spiritual beliefs, despite colonialism, Christianity, and Islam. So my memoir is what is known as a hybrid memoir. It links essays of lyrical narrative poetry, reflective analysis, and storytelling about my mixed race family, of nurturing them, of being a breast cancer survivor, of teaching critical race realities, and finally to the fabric I wear now as an anti-racist activist, poet, and writer. And I'm the anti-racist director for Lyricality, which is a fabulous organization in central Minnesota. But this evening, I want you to join me as I time travel back to February 10th, 1942, to the island of Singapore, my hometown, the land of my ancestors, in the middle of Southeast Asia. It was the center of the Pacific theater of World War II. Here's an excerpt from the papers, and I want to channel my father's voice. By Jove, it was really hell let loose. We were machine gunned by enemy planes. 1 or 2 hits were just a yard in front of me. I took charge of the Lewis gun. About 2 a.m., there was heavy shell fire from the enemy, One regular sergeant I spoke to about an hour before received a direct hit. Whatever remains they could collect of him, they buried him in the shell hole. Lance Corporal Harold Bruins, 1st Battalion Straight Settlement Volunteer of the Eurasian Company D, was fighting for his life, his family, homeland, and the British Empire. So Singapore was my home for the first 30 years of my life, and the home of up to many generations of Eurasians who were my ancestors. And Singapore is nestled at the tip of the peninsula that's now West Malaysia that Marian was describing in her piece. And I didn't have a concept of winter, as it was a tropical island in the middle of Southeast Asia, 1.5 degrees north of the equator. It's summer all year long. And the island's coastal continental shelf slopes far down into the ocean floor. It's sheltered by the archipelago of Indonesia, and it's one of the deepest seaports between Europe and Asia. It attracts people from all parts of the world. Even pirates appropriated the island in Disney's The Pirates of Caribbean at World's End movie. You got to watch it in about 10 minutes into that movie, and you'll be welcome to Singapore. An English administrator, Sir Stamford Raffles, claimed this island from its indigenous people in 1819, and thus began mine and Singapore's colonial British history. I knew Singapore as a tiny city-state, an island roughly 25 miles long and 15 miles across. From an early age, I loved to walk with my father and our family dogs along the beaches, washed by the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. Since I left in 1978, land reclamation has increased Singapore's area by 22% to accommodate one of the world's most breathtaking and beautiful airports and over 35 million tourists a year. And it was the location of the Crazy Rich Asian movies. And I mentioned that later in my memoir, so you go read it when it comes out. But how did I find my father's papers? A huge 6 foot by 5 foot by 3 foot high, rough-hewn wooden crate came with my mother, Margaret Bruins, when she emigrated at 80 years old in 1994 from Singapore to St. Cloud, Minnesota, to live with me, my husband, and her grandchildren. It stayed in the garage as she slowly transferred the contents into the room that I had so lovingly prepared for her. But she was a hoarder, so nothing left her room, and more items got added to her barang-barang stuff, like newspapers, advertisement flyers, even empty toilet paper rolls for art projects, she said. 15 years later, it became more difficult for me to take care of her, and I arranged her long-term care at the Good Shepherd nursing home in the neighboring town of South Rapids. It took me 6 years to clean out her room. I did small sections in between my family life and full-time job, and then came across these papers. My father was born in 1909, my mother in 1914. By 1939, the sun never set on the British Empire as its colonies stretched around the globe, glowing pink on most maps. My parents, in their youth, were experiencing the golden age of Singapore's Eurasian community, the ethnic group that we belonged to. And there was no concept that I can remember of the term colonialism or racism. These were terms that I only learned in my graduate ethnic studies classes at St. Cloud State University in the early 1990s, and began to understand how my community was formed since the 15th century through a series of colonialists, Portuguese, Dutch, British, in Asia. Let me go back, though, to World War II. Japan dropped the first bombs on Singapore City at 4:20 a.m. on December 8, 1941. Now, Singapore is 1 day ahead of American time, so it was actually at the very same time that the bombs fell on the other side of my world at that time in Pearl Harbor. It was the Empire of Japan's concerted global attack that included Guam, Philippines, Hong Kong, Malaya, and Singapore. And in Singapore, the Japanese bombers had a clear view of the lighted city where British expatriates and officers were dancing the warm tropical night away. These first bombs fell on a Catholic cathedral where my maternal great-grandmother was sheltering with my father's younger and only brother Moses. It killed her and wounded my uncle. I don't remember, though, my mother talking about the tragic death of her mama, the woman who had brought her up as her daughter. As I just transcribed my father's war stories, I began to see a man I did not know before. I got a new perspective of the sacrifice he made with his life to protect his family and homeland. A man who used hard labor as a way to block out sadness and defeat. A man who used small joys to uplift a spirit that could have been so easily crushed. Perhaps my father dreamt of food. As wild winds wrapped around his rapidly thinning frame, covered in the thick, dark green wool overcoat, the roughness that he had brought back from the war so that my small fingers could touch. He was a hard worker, and perhaps it was this work ethic that had led the Japanese to pick him as one of the few Singaporean Eurasians as slave labor in the POW camps. It's a possibility, I don't know. My father would not have heard, felt, or even seen the world's first atomic bombs dropped from on high by the American B-29 bombers on the Japanese city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. He was 1,000 miles from the epicenter of the atomic explosions. 35 years later, in 1980, when I was 32, I joined the anti-nuclear movement in Massachusetts. I was aware of the powerful forces of nuclear fission, and more importantly, the radioactive residues that it could affect generations of our children. Such powerful destruction in the hands of unwise leaders is still with us. For I don't think we have learned yet our lessons from the explosion on Hiroshima, which immediately killed an estimated 80,000 people, including women and children. Tens of thousands more would die of radiation exposure. Not satisfied, this new imperial power, the United States, 3 days later, on August 9th, dropped another atomic bomb on Nagasaki that killed 40,000 more people. This brought the end to World War II, and the irony was that this death and destruction brought freedom for my father and other POWs, and my birth in post-war Singapore. It was 3 years, 5 months, 9 days that my father was POW, cruelly separated from his family. 825 of those days were imprisonment in the Hakodate POW camps. They were finally reunited, my parents, on October 25th, 1945. I was born 3 years later in Singapore as a British subject of King George VI, because Britain had regained Singapore as a crown colony. I was briefly Malaysian when the country joined Malaysia in 1963, and only in 1965 was I to become a Singaporean, with the Singapore's final independence from its imperial masters. And meant much more. But I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Hedy. Make sure to read in the comments, folks commenting and appreciating. That was brilliant as always. I wrote in there that I've learned so much from everyone in this cohort, but of course, especially from Hedy. It's just been fascinating, just all of us, so much of history of the 20th century, and then all of us landing at some point in the Twin Cities and St. Cloud and Minnesota. So just the sense of history, and everyone's work gives me a lot of hope too, because they're naming and archiving, recording, explaining, sharing things that most of us don't know, or most of our countries don't know, and that we need to know. So thank you so much for that, Hedy. I do want to just share Balbai Her's bio, even though she couldn't be here tonight, but she was, of course, an essential part of our group. And then, as I wrote in the chat, love to have a little Q&A. So feel free to drop questions in the chat, or you could raise your hand if you want to, resolve and pass the veil and share your face or your voice. I'm just going to read our youngsters. Can I share this? Yeah. Can everyone see Bao Bai? Okay. So this is not the bio that she gave us because she didn't get to that, I don't think. But this is a recent bio of hers, and it's a recent photo, I think, from last year. So this is our Bao Bai, her arts and culture creative placemaker. Bao Bai Her, an educator and storyteller, is known for her work in chronicling the narratives of Asian Americans. In 2023, she spearheaded a reflection on Hmong culture and language with Public Art St. Paul as part of the Sidewalk Poetry Workshop series. Her digital zine, Hmong American Experiences During the Pandemic, was published in 2022 in collaboration with the Hmong Museum. From 2019 to 21, hers works were featured in #Mini Asian Stories by the Coalition of Asian American Leaders. I'm sorry, my heater might be making noise here. Staring Down the Tiger by Pa Der Vang and the Summit Avenue Review. Prior to these, she served as an instructor at the University of Minnesota Duluth, where she taught college writing and worked as a writer's consultant for the writing workshops. Currently, Her holds the position of Arts and Culture Coordinator at Zia Gallery and Cafe, where she champions Asian and BIPOC artists. She recently launched SEA, Southeast Asians Us, Write, and Design, a youth program aimed at nurturing the creative, entrepreneurial, and leadership abilities of Southeast Asian youth. I've actually known Bao Bai for some 15 years, maybe. So maybe when she not even, I don't know if it's that long, but like maybe when she started college. And so it's just been amazing to watch her grow as a writer, artist, leader, entrepreneur, everything, and the future's in good hands. So please do check out her work and seek her out in the community. She does many things. And of course, we miss her very much tonight. So thanks for letting me do that. And so now we'll have a little Q&A, a cute little Q&A. Would anyone like to comment or ask a question to our readers, or,
I would like to say something. Oh,
Thank you.
whoever.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm Yin. I know Hedy, and I'm coming to know about the Loft more. And I'd like to thank all the readers today. You were amazing. Your stories, each of them were different. They were different cultures, different aspects. I really, enjoy it. And I am also curious to eventually become part of a creative nonfiction cohort someday. So I'm sure Hedy will help me through that. But I feel really honored to be here today, to be able to listen to what you read before it was published. And once it's published, I'm definitely getting your books to read the entire story. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so sweet. I love that. I appreciate that. I have a question for my cohort members, which was how did the weekly meetings and workshop format support your writing, or what kind of writing practices did y'all develop throughout the year?
I think it was absolutely crucial. I have a Master of Arts in multicultural education. I don't have a Master of Arts in creative writing. So I've never studied creative writing. And here was, Sun Yung giving us all these different ways that memoirs can be written. And it was like, a secret box that I could at least at last see than just reading. And now I read memoirs and I keep thinking of all the things you were saying, Sun Yung. So I'm not sure that's good or not, but yeah, it's critical. I have Sun Yung's questions in front of me as I re-edit my manuscript, and her piece was, where am I in the story? And I'm really changing it to that. Not just telling, not just showing, telling and showing, but also where am I? So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's super helpful to have structure. So I Monday nights when we have this class became like my special like investment in me time, and that I look forward to. And I have two little kids and a full-time job, and like house chores and all that. So it's really easy to, like, if I were on my own, it's really easy to just like be tired and not write. But having a class that meets weekly, and I know like the page goal by the end of the year, and we have like workshops scheduled throughout the year. So I have like a little stepping stone to like reach, and it does push me to set aside time to write every night. So and then it becomes like therapeutic, like, okay, this is time for me and my art and my writing. So yeah, I appreciate having the structure and the support of our little cohort.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in quick and just say that it's also a great place to where you have like a local focus group of like your biggest cheerleaders. So I think it's a space where if you're trying to figure out how to talk about something or how to write about something, it's a great space to safely process it, and test on folks that are prepared and signed up for it and provide real honest feedback. And so it's just a really great creative space to be in. I would recommend it to anyone here.
I have a question for everyone. Thanks for all those insights. If you all would say something about what's next for you, you talked a little bit about it, but what's kind of in the next month, 6 months, 12 months? What are you going to be doing for your writing or yourself or your creativity, or if you want to share any kind of horizons with our community tonight?
I'll go. I am looking forward to publishing my manuscript, but also sort of, I don't know, I think working in this group has really inspired me to kind of want to go back to some of the basics and look at like some more documentation projects related to the memoir. I think Hedy, all of the like historical kind of like aspects you bring into your writing has inspired me to want to dig deeper into some of those things too. So looking forward to, yeah, like trying to publish this manuscript, but then also, I don't know, just kind of build out my understanding of the context and create some kind of side projects related to it, I guess. I don't know. I kind of want to get into some more audio essays. So I'm gonna think about that.
The St. Paul Almanac's 25th, is it 20th or 25th anniversary publication will be publishing a piece of mine on breast cancer. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm ready to publish. I am 76. I'm still healthy and lively, but I want a legacy to be left for my family, as well as close friends and the community. And I need to get that out as soon as possible. So, yeah.
So for me, of course, finishing this manuscript, revise, and ushering it to publication is the main goal. And like a secondary goal is just to kind of come out of my shell a little more. I am just introverted and shy by nature, and I was super nervous about this reading tonight, to be honest. But it's great. It's thank you for your supportive words, and like to hear how the writing or the words like impact other people is important for me to know. So like yeah, just coming out of my shell and going to more events or doing like appearances or readings and writing and publishing more.
I think I'm the odd duck in this cohort in that I'm not. My goal is just to finish it, or even like half finish my manuscript. Terrible student, and Sun Young was very patient with me. But no, this is also a space that was allowed me to process and just continue to kind of reflect on it, this project. I'm not convinced that publishing is what is something I'm going to pursue, but just really would like to just get it down. And so just appreciate the chance to do that, and I'll stop procrastinating on this project at some point. That's my focus.
Thank you. I always say if you're procrastinating, that's how you know you're meant to be a writer. It's a spiritual requirement, I think. So thank you everyone so much. Thank you, Hedy, Mary Ann, Huang, Angelina, and our absent Bao Bai. Thank you, Jack, for all your amazing support this whole program and ongoing. Oh my gosh, you are an angel. Everyone at the department's an angel. Thank you everyone for coming to this beautiful reading. I'm gonna go cry now, release you back to your lives, but please come visit us again, and please do come to more Loft events, and really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate you. And Jack dropped in the chat some upcoming readings that we're also having tomorrow, actually, tomorrow night. So see you back here for the novel writing cohort if you're interested. Thank you.
You.
Great job, everybody. Marianne, wonderful job. Hedy, amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Catch you later.